Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about what should be the term for the adventuring group. Okay? In Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, what should be the term for the adventuring group? I want to talk about two aspects of it. I want to talk about one, the term, and then two, the D&D community's relationship to the term and the power that the D&D community has. All right, so let's jump into this. So basically, I was listening to some D&D commentator, and actually it was Seth Skorkowski, and he's doing his combat videos. He has a Combat 101 and a Combat 201. Fantastic videos, highly recommend them. And he's like, when you're talking about the adventuring group, or your crew, or your band, or your group, right, or your lance. I was like, lance? Ooh, that's interesting. Like, okay. So, so all in one fell swoop, he was saying, essentially we have this problem where there isn't a name for the adventuring group, okay? So when you use group in game, it's not clear if you use group at the table. It's not clear if you're talking about the group of players or you're talking about the group of player characters, right? So I think that the term should be lance. I had never heard that term before. I think we as the D&D community should begin to use the term lance specifically for the adventuring party, for the adventuring group. Why? Well, the term adventuring party, okay, is cumbersome and doesn't fit in the world, okay? So that's two problems. It's two words, and you're like, hey, let's all go out as an adventuring party. It just sounds terrible. It doesn't fit, right? But if we move over to lance, it solves a whole bunch of problems. One, you're not going to have that flip-flop between adventure party and adventure group. Warband was actually the term used in the Dungeons and Dragons miniature game. Band is pretty cool, right? But it also, band is great. I actually really like band, but the problem is you have bards. So you're like, hey, I'm a bard and I'm starting a band. Right? Oh my gosh. The bards are like the most, those poor dudes. It's terrible. So you have this issue, and basically, I think this is important because we need one word that we could use at the table that works, and that instantly, in one word, differentiates the adventuring party from the group of players. It's really important. I think it's super important, right? And the reason why is, it'll help with commentary, it'll help with the game, it'll help the table play, all this, right? Now, let's say, okay, so one, how do we get there? And I think this is really important. This is the important part of the video, right? We want lance to take over as the term that's going to be used for adventuring party. One, there's a little bit of roughness as far as using lance in Faerun or in Kryn or in Thracion, which is my own special world, whatever world you're in. There might be a little bit of friction using lance across all these different worlds, okay? There's always a compromise. You're never going to find, a perfect solution. But I think lance is strong. It instantly, gives a sense of danger. It's saying, we're here to take care of problems. It gives some reality to the term, to the reality that the adventure groups are wrecking parties. They are combat machines, right? Carefully, precisionally honed combat machines, right? And lance reflects that. I love it, right? So how does the D&D community move the ball forward? Okay, so one of the things I think is lance is perfect for something we're going to need to do in the future. So this is interesting. I loved here you go. I just got an orange spine easily. Here you go. This is like 1985, I believe, is the date of this book. This is a gorgeous orange spine easily, and this was specifically made by TSR, right? TSR 1987. You can see it. There's their little logo, TSR. Okay, TSR owned the game, and then Wizards of the Coast owned the game, and then Hasbro owned the game. Game's had 3 owners, okay, but it's only ever had one D&D community. And here's the thing, I think the proper relationship for Dungeons and Dragons community is to always be respectful and rooting for the owners of Dungeons and Dragons. But also never, ever forget, the owners might change, but the D&D community remains the same. It's one united front that supports the game and cares about the game and is going to be a second guardian for the game forever. forever. And I think so one of the things is we have the right and the ability to determine what happens in the game. And so if the D&D community, if all the D&D commentators say, Lance, the 4P, your wizard, your fighter, your rogue, your cleric, the Lance, the adventuring party, the adventuring group, and uses this consistently, I think one of the things that will happen is it'll just go into the book. Right? That happens a lot. That, boy, you want to talk about that? If you don't think that's right, look at Session 0, the most nonsense mechanic that's ever been, one of the most nonsense mechanics that's ever been introduced in TTRPGs. Dungeons & Dragons is like, I ain't putting Session 0 into my game. Nobody needs that nonsense. 6 years later, into 5th edition, they're like, oh, here's your official rules for Session 0, right? If the D&D community accepts something and rolls forward with it, it will become canon. That is a very real reality. Very real reality. So I think we should the D&D community should unite behind the word Lance. Begin using it for adventuring party, okay, adventuring group, and then watch and see how their united front, united use of a term becomes canon. And the reason why is I think the D&D community needs to get very focused, right? One of the things we recently saw is you can have an incredibly important goal that you need to achieve, and if you don't have a central leader where people can go ask questions of them, whatever you believe ain't going to become reality, right? So I think the D&D community needs to start raising up specific commentators as center points for that have good relationships with the current owner of Dungeons & Dragons, which is Hasbro Gaming. And by the way, they're the greatest guardian the game's ever had. They far surpassed TSR, in my opinion. They've owned the game longer, and they've done far more with it than TSR ever did. And it's been financially safer it clearly has been financially safer under the guardianship of Hasbro. But we need to be able to point to and say, these are the people who are speaking for the D&D community right now on this issue. And I think we can even have different leaders. Like we say, hey, when it comes to disability in the game, this is the person that, that Hasbro should be listening to. When it comes to D&D's relationship with the OSR, this is the person. When it comes to dice, this is the person, right? We should have centralized leaders within the D&D community and begin to exert power in very real ways. Set goals and then see those goals created. All right, and because the reality is, the game's owner will change, but the D&D community is forever. It is, and honestly, when I say that, I think that is very real. I think the D&D community would continue even if the game was never printed again. There's no two ways about that. Pathfinder's probably a very real example that when D&D is not giving the D&D community what it wants, it's still going to get what it wants, right? So I think we should go with Lance, and I think the D&D community should begin to very carefully practice identifying a fix, staging that fix, and confirming that fix is in place. Because and to be careful about what we ask for, right? To have a clear, centralized message to Hasbro. And I think we can do that through D&D commentators and through logical and useful commentary. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.